Have you ever walked into a room in your home, looked around at all the things you've gathered over the years, and felt something you couldn't quite explain? Not sadness, exactly. Not even regret. Just a quiet heaviness. Maybe it's the boxes in the corner you haven't opened in years, the cabinets filled with things you once needed but no longer touch, the clothes that don't quite fit the life you're living now. And somewhere deep inside, there's a whisper asking, why am I still holding on to all of this? If that feeling sounds familiar, I want you to know, you're not alone. There comes a time in life, especially after 70, when God gently invites us into a different way of living. Not a life of accumulation, but a life of release. Not one of striving, but one of peace. A life where we begin to let go of what no longer serves us, so we can finally make space for what truly matters. And today, I want to walk with you through something deeply important. Not complicated, not overwhelming, just honest and freeing. We're going to talk about 7 things God wants you to let go of after 70, so you can live a fuller, more peaceful, and freer life. Because here's the truth. God never intended for you to carry unnecessary weight into this season of your life. This chapter is not about holding on tighter. It's about opening your hands. So let's begin gently with something we can all see, touch, and feel. Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry aren't emotional at all. They're physical. They're sitting right there in our homes. All the things we've collected over decades, furniture, dishes, papers, decorations, boxes, filled with just-in-case items. Each piece has a story, a memory, a reason we kept it. That old chair reminds you of evenings spent reading to your children. The stack of letters brings back voices you haven't heard in years. The kitchenware you haven't used in a decade still feels too meaningful to let go, and none of that is wrong. But there comes a moment when we have to ask ourselves a gentle question. Is this still serving the life I'm living now? Because what once brought comfort can slowly become clutter, not just in your home, but in your heart. When every shelf is full, when every drawer is crowded, something inside us begins to feel the same way. Overwhelmed, tired, a little stuck. God is not a God of confusion or chaos. He is a God of peace. And sometimes creating that peace starts in the simplest place, your environment. Letting go of excess possessions isn't about forgetting your past. It's about honoring your present. It's about choosing to surround yourself only with what truly brings you peace, comfort, and meaning today. You don't have to do it all at once. In fact, I encourage you not to. Start with one small space, a single drawer, a shelf, maybe a box you've been avoiding. Pick up each item and ask yourself, does this still bring me peace? Does this still have a place in the life I'm living now? And when the answer is no, allow yourself to release it, not with guilt, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Because every item served you at one point. And now, you're simply making room for something even more important: clarity, lightness, and peace. And here's something beautiful to remember. What you no longer need could be exactly what someone else is praying for. A young family starting over, a neighbor in need, a charity that can turn your excess into someone else's blessing. When you let go, you're not losing anything. You're giving life to something new. And slowly, as your space begins to clear, something else clears too. Your mind feels lighter. Your breathing feels easier. Your home begins to feel like a sanctuary again, a place of rest, not responsibility. Now, as we sit with that thought for a moment, I want to gently shift your attention to something less visible, but often much heavier, because sometimes the things we need to let go of aren't sitting on our shelves. They're sitting in our relationships. By the time you reach this stage in life, you've known many people. You've loved deeply, supported others, sacrificed, forgiven, and endured. And many of those relationships have been beautiful, but not all of them. Some have quietly drained you over the years. Maybe it's the friend who only calls when they need something, but never asks how you're doing. Maybe it's a family member whose words leave you feeling small, unseen, or unappreciated. Or someone who brings tension, negativity, or criticism into your life every time you interact. And for a long time, you may have tolerated it, out of love, out of duty, out of habit. But here's something I want you to hear clearly. God does not ask you to remain in relationships that harm your spirit. He calls you to love, but He also calls you to wisdom. There is a difference between loving someone and allowing them to hurt you. There is a difference between being kind and abandoning your own peace. At this stage of your life, your energy is precious. Your emotional well-being matters more than ever, and you have every right to protect it. Letting go of toxic relationships doesn't always mean cutting someone off completely. Sometimes it simply means creating space. It means setting gentle but firm boundaries, choosing not to engage in conversations that drain you, limiting how often you see or speak to someone who consistently brings negativity into your life. And yes, sometimes it does mean walking away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in peace. Because choosing peace is not rejection, it's self-respect. Imagine what your life would feel like if you were surrounded only by people who truly see you, appreciate you, and bring warmth into your days. People who listen, who laugh with you, who make you feel safe, valued, and loved. That kind of environment isn't just nice to have, it's something you deserve. And when you release the relationships that weigh you down, you create space for those that lift you up. Even if that space is quiet at first, even if it means spending more time alone. Because peace, even in solitude, is far more nourishing than noise filled with negativity. And over time, that peace becomes something sacred. It becomes a place where you reconnect with yourself and with God. Because sometimes, when we remove the distractions, we finally hear His voice more clearly, gently guiding us, comforting us, reminding us that we are never alone. And as you begin to let go of what no longer serves your spirit, something else begins to shift. You start to feel a little lighter, a little freer, a little more like yourself again. And that's where we're going next, into another layer of life that many people carry for far too long without even realizing it. And that next layer is something that doesn't sit on your shelves, and it doesn't always show up in your relationships either. It shows up in the quiet moments of your day, in the things you feel obligated to do, even when your heart is tired. Because for most of your life, you've been the one people could count on. You were the one who showed up early, stayed late, fixed what was broken, and carried more than your share without complaining. You raised children, supported a household, helped neighbors, showed up for church, volunteered, gave your time, your strength, your energy, over and over again. And somewhere along the way, being needed became part of who you are. So even now, in this season of life, it can feel almost unnatural to step back. You may still find yourself saying yes when you want to say no, taking on responsibilities that exhaust you, feeling guilty at the thought of letting someone else handle things. But I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself something gently. Is this still mine to carry? Because not every responsibility that once belonged to you is meant to follow you into this chapter of your life. God does not ask you to spend your later years overwhelmed and worn down. He doesn't measure your worth by how much you do for others. He cares about your heart, your peace, your well-being. And sometimes one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for others is to step back. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop loving your family, your friends, your community. It simply means you begin to trust that others can grow into their own responsibilities, just as you once did. If your adult children still rely on you for things they can do themselves, stepping back gives them a chance to stand on their own. If you're maintaining a home or a routine that has become too heavy, letting go of that burden creates space for ease. And yes, there may be a little discomfort at first. You might feel a tug of guilt, a voice that says, I should still be doing more. But that voice is not coming from God. God's voice is gentle, and it often sounds more like, rest. Come to me, all who are weary. You have done enough. You have spent a lifetime giving. Now it is time to receive, to wake up without a long list of obligations hanging over your head, to choose how you spend your day, not out of duty, but out of desire. Maybe that looks like sitting with a cup of coffee a little longer in the morning, taking a walk just because you feel like it, calling a friend for no reason at all, spending time in prayer, not because you have to, but because you want to. These are not small things. They are sacred moments. And when you release the responsibilities that no longer belong to you, you begin to experience a different kind of life. One that feels softer, lighter, more aligned with who you are now. And as that space opens up, something else begins to rise to the surface. Something many people carry quietly, without ever speaking it out loud. It's the voice inside your own mind, the one that replays old memories, the one that whispers, you should have done better. You could have chosen differently. If only you had. Regret has a way of settling into our hearts over time. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It simply lingers, showing up in quiet moments, reminding you of things you wish you could change. Maybe it's a decision you made years ago, a relationship that didn't turn out the way you hoped, words you wish you could take back, opportunities you didn't take. And then, layered on top of that, there's the way you speak to yourself about those things, sometimes more harshly than you would ever speak to anyone else. You might not even realize how often it happens. That inner voice that says, I wasn't good enough. I should have known better. I failed. But let me ask you something from the heart. Would you speak that way to someone you love? Would you sit across from a dear friend, look into her eyes, and tell her she's a failure because of something she did decades ago? Of course not. You would remind her of her strength, her courage, her growth. You would tell her that she did the best she could with what she knew at the time. And here's the truth. That same grace belongs to you. God does not hold your past over your head the way you sometimes do. He doesn't replay your mistakes to shame you. He offers forgiveness, again and again. And not just forgiveness, but freedom. But you have to be willing to accept it. Letting go of regret doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means releasing the weight of it. It means choosing to see your life not as a collection of mistakes, but as a journey filled with lessons, growth, and resilience. Every choice you made, right or wrong, shaped you into the woman you are today. A woman who has loved deeply, who has endured, who has learned, who is still here, and that matters more than anything you wish you could change. The truth is, you cannot go back and rewrite the past, but you can change the way you carry it. Instead of holding it like a burden, you can hold it like wisdom. Instead of letting it define your worth, you can let it deepen your compassion for yourself and for others. And when you begin to release that harsh inner voice, something beautiful happens. You start to feel lighter inside. You begin to breathe a little easier. You look in the mirror and see not your mistakes, but your strength. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you begin to feel at peace with yourself. And as that peace settles in, it gently prepares your heart for another kind of release. One that has been quietly shaping your life for years, often without you even noticing it. That quiet influence is something many of us carry for so long, we don't even question it anymore. It lives in the thoughts we've repeated for decades, the beliefs we accepted when we were younger and never stopped to re-examine. You might hear it in simple phrases that feel almost automatic. I'm too old for that. That's just the way things are. I can't learn something new at my age. Or maybe it sounds like, I've always done it this way. Even when deep down, something inside you is ready for change. These beliefs can feel comforting, like familiar shoes you've worn for years. But sometimes those same beliefs quietly limit your life. They keep you from trying something new, from exploring new ideas, from stepping into experiences that could bring you joy, simply because they don't fit the version of life you once believed was possible. And here's the truth I want to share with you, gently and honestly. God did not create you to stop growing. Not at 60. Not at 70, not at 80 or beyond. As long as you are here, there is still life in front of you, still purpose, still possibility. Letting go of outdated beliefs doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means allowing your faith to grow deeper than your fears. It means asking yourself, is this belief helping me live fully, or is it holding me back? Maybe you've always believed that technology is too complicated, so you've avoided it. But what if learning just one small thing, like how to video call a grandchild, could bring more connection into your life? Maybe you've believed that your best years are behind you. But what if this season holds a different kind of beauty? One that is quieter, deeper, and more meaningful than anything before? Sometimes the only thing standing between you and a more joyful life is a belief you've never challenged. And when you begin to release those beliefs, even slowly, the world starts to open again. You begin to feel curious. You begin to feel capable. You begin to feel alive in a way that surprises you, because growth doesn't have an expiration date, and neither does joy. Now, as we move a little deeper into this conversation, there's another weight many women carry, one that often hides behind good intentions. It's the weight of financial worry. For most of your life, you've been careful. You saved when you could. You budgeted. You made sacrifices. You thought ahead, not just for yourself, but for your family. And that discipline, that responsibility, it's something to be proud of. But sometimes, those habits of caution follow us into a season where they no longer serve us in the same way. You might find yourself hesitating to spend money on things that would genuinely improve your life. A more comfortable chair, a small trip you've always wanted to take, a lunch with friends that would lift your spirit. And yet, there's that quiet voice that says, I shouldn't. What if I need it later? What if something goes wrong? And while it's wise to be thoughtful, it's also important to ask, am I still living in fear, even when I don't need to be? Because money was never meant to be a source of constant anxiety. It was meant to support your life, not restrict it. At this stage in your life, after all the years of planning and working and saving, it's okay to begin trusting that you've done enough, that it's safe to enjoy what you've built, that using your resources to create comfort, joy, and meaningful experiences is not wasteful. It's purposeful. This doesn't mean being careless. It means being free. It means shifting from a mindset of scarcity to one of gratitude. Instead of asking, "What if I run out?" you begin to ask, "How can I use what I have to enrich my life today?" Maybe that means finally replacing something in your home that no longer brings you comfort. Maybe it means giving a gift, not out of obligation, but out of love. Maybe it means allowing yourself to experience something new without guilt. Because the truth is, you didn't spend all those years preparing just to live in constant worry. God provides not just for survival, but for peace. And trusting that provision is part of letting go. And as you begin to release that quiet anxiety around money, something else begins to loosen its grip, something deeper, something that touches almost every part of your life, whether you realize it or not. It's the fear that shows up when things begin to change. And in this season of life, change can feel especially unsettling. The world moves faster than it used to. Technology evolves. People come and go. Your body feels different. Your routines shift. And it's only natural to want to hold on to what feels familiar, to stay where things are predictable, safe, known. But sometimes what feels safe is actually keeping you stuck, because life doesn't stop changing, and neither are you meant to. Fear of change often whispers quietly, "Stay where you are. Don't risk it. It's too late." But faith speaks differently. Faith says, you are still being led. You are still growing. There is still more for you. Letting go of the fear of change doesn't mean you suddenly feel brave all the time. It simply means you begin to take small steps, even when you feel uncertain. It means choosing curiosity over fear, trust over control. Maybe that looks like trying something new, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Maybe it's simplifying your life in ways you never imagined. Maybe it's opening your heart to new people, new routines, new ways of living. Because every change carries within it the possibility of something beautiful, something you haven't experienced yet, something that could bring you peace in ways you didn't expect. And when you stop resisting change and start walking with it, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel less afraid, more open, more alive. And in that openness, you begin to see your life not as something that is winding down, but as something that is still unfolding, still meaningful, still guided, and maybe, just maybe, more beautiful than you ever imagined it could be. So as you sit here reflecting on everything we've shared, I want you to take a quiet moment for yourself, not to think about everything at once. Just one thing you've been holding on to that you're ready to release. Maybe it's something in your home. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a thought you've carried for years. Whatever it is, you don't have to force it. Just begin. Because every small step you take toward letting go is a step toward peace. And you deserve that peace. You truly do. If something in this message spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear from you. You can share your thoughts in the comments, or simply write the word "release" as a quiet promise to yourself. And if you feel called to continue this journey of faith, peace, and purpose, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel Elderly Faith Journey. You're not walking this path alone, and no matter where you are in your life right now, there is still so much ahead of you, so much peace, so much freedom, so much life waiting to be lived, and it begins with letting go.